Hello, welcome to the part of my story where the aliens and the twin flame shit comes in. If you thought I sounded a bit weird before, it gets weirder. And this is also the part where I probably don't sound like a super good person or stable person, but I'm telling my story because it needs to be told, apparently. So let's just go with it. God, use me. God, use me. Please let what wants to come through for people listening, whatever's going to comfort them, whatever's going to validate them, whatever's going to teach them something that they need to know or hear now. And I'm opening my heart to everyone. I offer myself up just as another witness and not as a guru, but just as someone who's been through some stuff. So beforehand on my journey, it was really pregnancy loss, and then pregnancy again that really opened me up, as well as miraculously finding my dad and connecting with my clairvoyant medium grandfather that really opened me up. As a kid, I'd had experiences seeing orbs and beings in the room, but I really shut it out because it was freaky. And then I had just 2 experiences as an adult where I saw stuff too. So sometimes when meditating, I can see like light coming off the planet, and I can see streams of lights and orbs or something around, but it's usually not super clear. I've been getting better at seeing auras and things like that. But when I'm half asleep, like wake up in the middle of the night, I really seem to be like between the worlds, and my brain doesn't try to override like what you're seeing. And I was talking to my Patreon group about this morning. What we're seeing around us is actually our brain filling in the gaps. Like, this is scientifically proven. What we actually see is kind of an upside down, disjointed assortment of pictures and colors around us. And then our brain turns that into a whole picture. So there's so much that we actually see that our brain just deletes from our field and deletes from our knowing because it doesn't make sense, right? But when we're half asleep, or when we're in that hypnagogic state of like just before sleep, our brain doesn't work so hard to work out what's normal and what makes sense. So this can be a really good time to see stuff. But it's happened to me accidentally a few times. So once after I'd miscarried, I had my 2-year-old in the bed next to me. We were co-sleeping. And I woke up and I saw the figure of like a baby standing on top of me, like this dark shadow outline. And I jumped because I thought it was my 2-year-old about to fall out of bed or something. And I jumped and grabbed for them. And then my arms went straight through them. And I was like, this isn't a physical being. And then it disappeared. And I was like, and then I saw that my kid was still asleep next to me. And I was like, ghost baby. And the next day I was like, be free, ghost baby, this isn't your home, like whatever you are, like go away. And I was saging out the room. And then another time that was really cool was my kids had woken up in the next room crying, and I was like still half asleep, getting up to go check on them. And when I went in there, I could see that they were in this big ball of white light, and as I moved closer, the ball of white light opened up, like it stretched, it got bigger, and then I climbed into it next to them in bed, and we all went to sleep together in this one big ball of white light. And being half asleep, I didn't really question it. I went, oh, there's the bubble of white light of protection that I put around the kids, I can see it now, and then climbed into it with them. But that was another really amazing clairvoyant experience. But so I talked about like I've seen UFOs, had some clairvoyant experiences, weird kind of religious karma in my family, and I'd also learned that I can channel a little bit because I channeled my dad's name and I'd been talking to my guides. And so one day I was trying to work out what my purpose is, like all of us, right? And I thought, you know what, I am going to ask my guides and see what I can get through. And so I was lying in bed, meditating, and I thought I could hear my guides quite clearly. And I said, okay, guides, what's my purpose? I'm ready to hear. And they said, we want you to help people heal their ancestry. And I said, okay, ancestry. And I thought, I guess that kind of makes sense given what I've been through and my own journey finding my family. I was like, okay, why is that? And they said, well, people need to understand why they were in the families they were in and what they can do to heal those family lines so that they're a clean slate moving into the future. And I said, okay, why is that important? And they said, well, when people have filters based on their family history and who they think they are, they won't be able to see the future clearly, and they won't be able to receive all their blessings. They won't be able to meet new family. It'll all be filtered through this idea of like who they think they are. And basically in healing that, you're clearing your future and letting people understand what it actually means to live in reality, like what reality actually is. And I went, okay, why? Like, I was that kid. I was like, okay, why would I need to do that? Why is that my purpose? And I could hear my guides like audibly sigh. It was like, okay. And then they showed me the sky open up. So it's still like a really visual meditation experience, but it was like a blue sky, and then it was like almost like hitting a button, like the sky dissolved and it was space up in the sky. It was like you looked up and it was nebula and planets and spaceships around, and just like the energy shifted like crazy. Like, all right, here's what we're actually wanting to tell you. And they said, Earth is about to find out that you are not alone in the universe. You're very much not alone, but a part of a very busy family, and that there are ETs everywhere, and that you are family in the sky as well. And we need people to disconnect from their idea of what they think family is and heal those family wounds so that they can meet their new family, so that they can meet their sky family, so that they can transition into being like interstellar, so that we can actually see and perceive these beings and families and love them and not, you know, deal with them in a kind of triggered way. So I'm like, okay, so souls are real, reincarnation is real, psychics are real. I'm having trouble talking about any of this with, you know, my husband and the academics I work with at university. And now I'm also holding aliens and ETs are here, and it's my job to help people sort this out somehow. And I'm like, how am I ever going to talk to anybody ever again? So I started learning galactic astrology, which is really cool. I do that through Julia Balaz, who I highly recommend. And I thought that what I'd be doing was looking at people's charts, analyzing possible galactic incarnations, and then using intuition to just help me along the way. But actually what happened is I would sit down to do readings for people, and people's higher selves would just step in and tell me their story. I'd be like, okay, thanks for that. And I was doing them for free, and I was doing them for like $11, and I just basically treated it like an internship, and then just got more and more experience and more validation, and more people being like, how did you know that about me? And I would be passing on information like, this sounds batshit crazy, and I might just be making this all up, so I'll give you your money back if you don't like this. And they'd go, no, this makes complete sense. Why wouldn't this make sense? I'd be like, what? Like, I'm the most skeptical one in a reading, you know? But after enough times, the people said like, no, trust yourself. I went, okay, I'm gonna learn to get better at that. So basically, I was doing all these readings for people, getting more and more in touch and in tune with the ET entities, like researching, channeling, chatting, reading all the books about it, just basically like, you know, getting really into like all those Gaia programs, like muscle testing and working out what felt right for me, developing my intuition, that really going crazy. I do things like I would channel Arcturians, and then later see that like Dan Scranton had also channeled Arcturians, and basically word for word had the same message like on the same day. I'd be like, that is so validating, we're hearing the same message. So really getting super confident in all of this, but also tripping out because I'm like, this is real, you know. I'm not the one showing up to people at that time. This is about last year now. Going, you know, I'm going like, I'm not preaching to anybody, I'm literally just experimenting to see if this is real, and so far like all the boxes are getting ticked and all the miracles and syncs are happening. So I'm like, okay, guess this is real. And I guess that's what I was meant to share for this part, because my kids keep calling me, I'm really excited to go pick them up again. So I'm going to touch on the twin flame shit, which is even crazier than the alien channeling shit. I'm sorry I'm swearing so much. So here we go. Time for some twin flame stuff. Funny that I keep interrupting myself or getting interrupted before I get to this part. You know, I'm obviously manifesting that in that timing. And I've been reading Murakami's Wind Up Bird Chronicle. It's my toilet book, so I only read about a page a day. And I'd resolved today to finally finish this video if I can. And the line that I read on that page this morning was this woman who wasn't able to finish telling her story. And she says, I could not tell you the next part because I was not prepared to tell it. And that's why she had run away in the middle of telling the story. And I guess I'm prepared to tell my story now. And it's funny that I can talk about aliens and, you know, being completely off the charts woo-woo, and like my family history and like my pregnancy loss, and I can talk about all of that, but the twin flame stuff is still like very new and strange, and funnily enough is probably one of the most like sanity questioning things that happen to people on the spiritual path, especially like when you're female or you just, anyway, I'm not gonna try to give too many disclaimers. I'm just gonna tell my story and trust that's what's meant to come through is coming through. Use me, God. Thank you. Okay, one of the only bits of guidance that came through before I sat down to do this was don't try to convince people of anything. Don't try to be persuasive or make a point or anything. Just tell it. So I'm going to do that. Okay. So I've been on this journey for just over a year now. I was married for a good few years and with my partner before then. We were a good team, my ex-partner and I, but we were very disconnected, had trouble understanding each other. Things that were tiny and petty would turn into big fights. And I was getting more and more woo-woo and really having trouble talking about that with him. And you know, that's my fault as well. I'm not blaming anybody here. Like, he's definitely a karmic soulmate. We had 2 beautiful kids together. I'm his karmic as much as he's mine. But I was just getting lonelier and lonelier in that relationship. And generally, you know, I would talk about, or I'd ask a question like, what do you think the soul is? And I'd talk about quantum physics and stuff. And he would literally like leave the room while I was talking, like just blank me. Or even get angry when I was talking about it. And it was just very clearly a frequency mismatch, you know? It was like we were living in different dimensions and he couldn't hear me or couldn't get through. Or when I was talking about woo-woo stuff, he would literally just like have to leave the room. Like we were just repelling each other. And things were also very, very tense for like a lot of good reasons, not blaming anybody. And I'm very, very grateful for that relationship and the amount of growth it put me through. And like, because it was so lonely, I did have lots of time to go within and learn how to meditate and study everything that I did and really find out who I am and what the universe really looks like. It's been so profound. But there was one day after a whole lot of trials that I won't go into, but just trust me, there were a lot of trials, that it was just one particularly bad day after years of trying. And I just very honestly said, I can't do this anymore. I said, I'm very sorry. I just can't. And I wouldn't have said that if I didn't mean it. And he didn't really believe me, but I meant it. I really felt like I'd done my best and I was at not just breaking point, but like, you know, you're on like your 200th chance kind of thing. I was just like, no, like I'm calling it. And this was a decision that I made within myself just over a year ago. And it was like a shift within me. And what I did that night is I dismantled this little like love jar I'd made. It was like a little spell jar, but it wasn't to like manufacture love or anything. It was just something I made to like boost the love in the house, right? And I dismantled that and I cleansed everything and I made a self-love jar instead. And I just tuned in to the energy that needed to come through. I ended up just sitting down, having a big cry. And I was just like, I'm ready to love myself more. I'm ready to find out what that looks like. The next day I met my twin flame. So what was happening there? So since about the beginning of last year, I again was like trying to get on board this whole like self-love thing, right? And I'd always been really self-conscious, like couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. Self-conscious. I would avoid eye contact with myself in the mirror. Was pretty like comfortable with my life and how I was. Like I'd made my peace with thinking that I was like this weird looking unattractive person, and I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like I've lived a good life not being a supermodel or being attractive, you know, like I'm fine with that. But just at the beginning of last year, I was like, you know what? I find everybody else beautiful. I find everybody else genuinely, uniquely, stunningly beautiful in their own way. How egotistical would I have to be to think that I'm the exception to that? And so I practiced looking in the mirror and like seeing something there, and I started to get to this place. And I think I even made like an Instagram post about it over a year ago when I was traveling in the States for a conference, and I actually was like, oh my god, I'm not hideous, like I can actually love myself a little bit. And so I'd been trying really, really hard to get on this journey. At the same time, I became like really magnetic. Like I would walk down the street and people's like heads would turn, they'd do double takes, like I was getting asked out a lot and I have to be like, I'm married. Just really weird. And I'd been in that energy before, because you know sometimes you just like it rains its paws, like everybody ignores you and then all of a sudden you seem to be getting attention. It was kind of that energy. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. But at the same time, I was feeling really good within myself. My frequency was rising. I was discovering my purpose more and more. I was very like disconnected from my husband. I was getting out of that oh my god, I need him to love me. I need him to love me in this very specific way. How am I going to get out of this kind of energy? And I was just like, you know what? I am just going to be the best me that I can be and let everything fall where it may, you know? So I was in this very like self-assured energy. Then at the same time, and this is kind of embarrassing, I was getting really obsessed with this kids show called Miraculous Ladybug. I was like Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir. I was traveling in the States and I hadn't seen my sister in a really long time, who's 19 years younger than me, and she was really into the show. And so when it came on like the Disney Channel when I was traveling, I was like, this is a show my sister likes. So I was watching it with my son and we were getting really into it, but I was getting like really, really into it. He was like, this is a fun TV show, and I'm like, whoa, why is this kids cartoon drawing me in so much? And there's all these yin and yang metaphors, he's like two halves of a whole complementing each other. And it was just like tugging on something in my subconscious, right? Do you ever get that? Where you're watching something or you're listening to something and you don't know what the message is, but it's just like there's something here and you get like sucked into it. And I got a bit obsessed with the show, and I was asking my guides like, what's going on? And they're like, there's a big sign here for you, but you're just not ready to hear it yet. You're resisting it, and that's why it feels like that tugging feeling. I'm like, what is going on here? Then around the same time, I made friends with this super, super psychic chick called Amy. She's awesome. I'm happy to link to all her stuff. She's at Gaia Gnostics. But yeah, so she and I just like channel together like crazy. Like we get on the phone and everything starts coming through, and like she'll say something I'm thinking and I'll say something she's thinking, and our channeling's so on point that we can channel like specific names and numbers and things that transpire. We're like super powerful together. And I asked her and I said, well, why do you think I'm in this whole like magnetic energy? What's going on? Is it like, because she gets that as well. I'm like, is it just like a frequency thing? Like people are noticing that I'm more high vibes, they're attracted to that. You know, did I get like a spiritual glow up or something? Like what's going on with that? And she tuned into it and she started laughing, like laughing with pity. And she was like, I'm so sorry, you're in twin flame energy. If you haven't already, you're about to meet your twin flame. I was like, okay. Like I didn't really know anything about that. Of course, like being in spiritual communities, I'd heard of it, but I had this extremely, like not even surface level understanding. I thought it was just a term, not even a spiritual term, but just like a term for a toxic, intense, on again, off again relationship that you grow a lot from, right? And that you get a strong sense of self in being able to transcend or something. That was my idea of it. I listened to a podcast about it years ago, and I could kind of relate a little bit about it to my husband, you know, that like instant recognition, sense of having a purpose together, and then that like hot and cold thing. But it was never really as intense with my husband, as in like there was always like this little bit of like resistance in a way, like this should we, shouldn't we, and it was very, very intense, and then all of a sudden very cold, but there was no like running back. It wasn't like a twin flame thing that they describe, where it's like people disappear and then they come back into your life, and then they disappear and then they come back into your life. It was like my husband and I moved in together, and then it went like cold straight away, and it did not come back online. So I was like, okay, and like looking back, maybe he was like a false twin flame, karmic or something, I don't know. And I'm happy to ignore all the labels as well. Like if we are all just soulmates and soul aspects of source from different soul families, learning all these different lessons from each other, I'm happy to go with a more fluid take like that. I'm just using the term twin flame because it's it actually explains what I've been going through on this journey, and so I'm going to use that language. Anyway, so I was aware that apparently I was in this twin flame energy, that I was attracting a twin flame. I was like, I'm already dealing with a marriage that's not going super well. I am so looking forward to being a cat lady for the rest of my life, being single if that comes up. I don't need any of that drama. I'm good. I'm sure if some like FUCK boy shows up to like cause drama in my life, I'm gonna be like, whatever, I'm good, man. So I wasn't really worried or that interested. But then I was in this Patreon group with Lady Sarah Yip, who's super, super cool. She's a numerologist, and she's doing a palm reading class on Zoom, and she has people from all over the world on Zoom. It so happens that she is based, at the time was based on the Gold Coast, now is based more like Brisbane, southeast Queensland, right where I am. I found her on YouTube, complete coincidence that she lives near me, 1144, okay, it's not a coincidence. But yeah, I was just really drawn to her, was going to her classes for about a year, then she had one on Zoom. It was a palm reading class. I went along. People don't usually talk to each other in that class, like we introduce ourselves and then the rest of the time it's like the guest teacher and Sarah talking, right? Then this person I've never seen comes on. The name Luke comes up, I see his face. I'm on my phone. It's like the gallery grid on Zoom. He's like smaller than a thumbnail, tiny, tiny little face. All of a sudden I just go nuts. In my head I'm just like, it's him, that's my person, that is a very significant person in my life. And in my head I can just hear myself going, no, I'm not ready for this, I don't want to do this, no, go away, you're not supposed to be here, this wasn't supposed to happen now, go away, no, what's happening? And I'm just like freaking out. And it's like I've got this double consciousness. So I'm like hearing this voice in my head, and I'm thinking, well, like part of me is thinking that, and then the other part of me is like, what is going on? Why am I reacting this strongly? I don't understand what's happening. Why am I making this up? Like I was witnessing myself, but it was almost like the inner knowing was having a freak out, and the ego Kelly was like, why are you reacting like this? It's just some random head you just saw on a Zoom screen. Like, it's all good. So part of this class, we all get to have like a palm reading. So they bring out pictures of our palms. Hilariously, all the themes that came up turned out to be themes for us on this journey. And then Luke speaks up and he's like, yeah, I really relate to Kelly's palm reading. A lot of that makes sense for me too. And on the Zoom screen, it's like a picture of Sarah, our teacher, his head on above her, mine below her. And she's saying, yeah, you'd be surprised how many people in this group all know each other and have past life connections or soul connections. And I'm like, what's with the synchronicities and the confirmations here? And I'm like quietly freaking out. Like, why is this person even talking to me or interacting with me at all? And not like in a posh way or whatever. Like, why are you talking to me? Like, I was like, people don't really talk to each other a whole lot. There's not a lot of like student interaction, and that's hard on a Zoom call anyway. So I was like, all right, calm down, Kelly. Let's just see what happens. Then it's his turn to get his palm read. And the palm reader talks about his commitment in relationships and how that's super strong and moves mountains. And he says, yeah, that's something I know I need some balance on in my relationship. So I can't remember if he said he was married or not, but it was very clear after that he was in like a long-term relationship at least. And then that voice in my head gets crazy jealous is like, no, he is not in a relationship with someone else. That person is my person. How dare they, and how dare they be so committed to them? That person's mine. And again, I'm like, what is wrong with you, Kelly? Why are you thinking this? You don't know this person. Like, I've never reacted like this in my life to anybody. I've definitely had moments of like meeting people and being like, oh, we've met before. There's a soul recognition here. And I've been proven right in that because of like the relationships that come out of it. But this was just like, I went to like psycho ex-girlfriend, possessive, jealous in seconds. Like, it was so weird. That's so not me. Anyway, so the call wrapped up. I'm like, what just happened? Oh well, I have no idea where in the world this person is. They might not even be on another call. I'm probably never going to meet this person again. I'm just going to let that go. And so I did my best to just forget about it, let it go. I even brought it up with my friend Amy, and I was like, hey, I had this weird like sense of knowing and freak out on a call when this person came up, and she didn't confirm or deny it. She just kind of laughed at me like, yeah, that happens. I was like, okay. And it's so funny how on this entire journey there's never been an external person to say like, yes, that's your twin flame. Like, it's always had to be something that we've had to decide for ourselves, which was very interesting. Anyway, so I keep going on deciding that I'm just going to try to be the best person I can be, trying to work on how to like keep my boundaries and self-love and all of that. It's still a journey. End up having that really bad day where I'm like, I can't do this anymore to my husband. And this had nothing to do with like twin flame stuff. I'd actually almost kind of forgotten about it at that point. But I was like, can't do this anymore. I'm seriously done. Then the next day, there was another workshop with this lady, Sarah Yip, who's super cool. But this one was in person, and you had the option of doing it online or joining in person. And at that point, I had never been away from my children for more than a couple of hours. I spent the night away from my oldest son when I was in the hospital giving birth to my second son. But I had never spent more than a couple of hours apart from that away from my children. Like, that is how intense, like, a parent I was. And that was because of a million excuses, like not having a lot of help, there being special needs, my husband kind of wanting me to like chain myself to them, sense that like I wasn't a good parent if I wasn't there. Yeah, anyway, major mind FUCK. And a lot of internal healing that needed to be done around that. Like, it's not everybody else's fault. Like, having is evidence of wanting on some level, right? Or at least in this case. So, and that was an amazing experience. But anyway, I'd never been away from my children. At this point, they're 2 and 5 years old. So for me to be like, I had a really rough day yesterday, and I'm going to go drive to the Gold Coast, which is an hour away. It's the city over from Brisbane. And I'm going to go to this workshop in person, and I'm not going to rush home, and I'm going to do this for me today. So I said to my husband, I'm done. I made this self-love jar. I made a choice, an aligned action to go do something for me this day and go join these spiritual people, right? To go to this workshop, like this numerology workshop. Get in the car, I'm like feeling amazing. There's like crazy traffic, but I'm singing along, getting all the signs and syncs and regos and everything. I notice that the happier I am, the faster the traffic moves. When I get agitated, the traffic stops. Like, just having a great time. Show up. It's only me and one other person who's actually made it to the class. So it's me, this one other person, and Kylie. So we end up just pulling a couple of chairs over to Sarah's computer so we can talk to people on Zoom. And then Luke walks in the room, this guy from the Zoom call, and I'm like, what are the odds that it's just like 4 people in this room and 2 of them are me and Luke? And I'm like, I'm an empath, but at this point, it was super subtle and super underdeveloped. This guy walks in the room, and all of a sudden, I can feel my aura. Like, for the first time in my life, I can actually feel it. I feel the edges of it. I know exactly where my aura begins and ends, and it starts spiking like it's being electrocuted. Like, my aura is being electrocuted, and it's like I can feel myself being spiked in the air, like around me, as if it's a second skin for me. And I'm sitting there like, what is going on? Who is this guy? And I've got that like, this mother effer is not real. Like, what's happening? And so I'm just very politely like, I'm going to go get him a chair and bring him around. And it's so funny too, because these 2 workshops were recorded. So I've got these 2 first meetings on video and you can see me like trying to be super normal. But on the inside, I'm like, what is happening? So I bring him around, we end up doing this meditation, and he's like, I was visualizing something, but then it like flicked and changed to what Kelly was seeing. And he's like, that's weird. It's like what you were thinking changed what I was thinking. And I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. And I'm like, trying to be normal, and this isn't a woo-woo workshop too. So it's like, it's not that normal to begin with. And I'm still trying to not be a complete psycho. So that was super crazy. I'm trying to make small talk, trying to act like I'm not intensely interested in this person. But like, oh yeah, so what's your life path number? And nice to meet you. And okay. And then at the same time, I started doing readings for people. I started channeling. I'm getting these amazing synchronicities. Everything is just blowing up. I'm channeling clearer and clearer. I channeled Keno numbers. I stupidly didn't put the ticket in, but I still have the ticket with the correct numbers highlighted, which were all 1s and 4s, and it was for game like 114 or something like that. But I was too embarrassed to ask my husband for $10 to go put a Keno ticket in, and then I watched the numbers come out and my guides were like, we told you. Anyway, so all these amazing synchronicities. I was getting more and more confirmation that all of this other world stuff is real. So I really want to talk to my teacher, Sarah, and I'm like, I'm channeling Arcturians and I'm getting it right, and all this stuff's going crazy and it's really just insane, and I feel like I'm losing my mind a bit, but it's all real. And Luke's listening to this and he's like, oh yeah, I really resonate with like Arcturians. I'm like, oh, do you? And their code for me is 133 when they want to talk to me. And like, we're walking out of the room and I made some comment, like, because Luke was saying that he was stuck in traffic getting there as well, and he almost turned around, but he kept seeing 777 on the highway, and my life path number is 7. He was like, I just felt like I had to be here. And he said that he had a feeling that he needed, or had some guidance that he was looking for a friend who was a life path 7. I'm like, well, I'm a 34-7. And as we're walking out of the workshop at the end of it, I said like, well, maybe you just knew that your new best friends were here waiting for you. And I think I shook his hand at the end or something. And we both had this funny kind of like, are we friends? I don't know, just this funny like click, like what's going on here? Really wanted to like invite him out for a burger. There's like a fish and chip shop next door. And I really wanted to be like, can we talk? But I had already been away from home for the longest I'd been away from home. Was like, my kids are probably waiting for me. My husband's probably like losing it back home. And also, very awkwardly, I was like, I don't want to invite everybody else. I just want to talk to the specific person. I don't want to awkwardly be like, he's invited, you're not. So I was like, okay, I better just go. Get in the car. 133 comes on the dash. I think it's like the mileage I have in the car or something, which is the Arcturian code. This guy's life path 279, and 279 comes up at the same time. It might have been on the range for the fuel or something, but it was both 279 and 133. So like this guy, the Arcturians, would later find out he's an Arcturian starseed. I'm Lyran, by the way. Apparently, according to Debbie Solaris, Arcturians are often here to guide Lyrans, which is crazy sync. And then this song comes on shuffle that I've never heard before and it's not on my playlist, Bohemian Like You. And I keep hearing it as I'm like you rather than I like you. And so I'm like leaving with these 2 syncs about this person and hearing I'm like you, Bohemian Like You playing on the way home. And then all these other songs coming up about like being friends and being like each other and being the same. And I'm like, okay, weird. And then so that week I am like trying to find this guy online. He's like not on Facebook, not on social media, anywhere that I can find. I think he was on LinkedIn, but it was a city he used to live in that came up. So I'm like, is this the same person? Also, I'd never heard his last name before, so I wondered if it were like a pseudonym. Like how school teachers have, like their first name and middle name up so their students can't find them, whatever. I wondered if it was his real last name. Couldn't find him, couldn't get a hold of him. And I was sitting there on the computer, like trying real hard to stalk this person and coming up with nothing. Then I get a notification on my phone because I'd made this like yearly numerology planner thing. And I'm just like, yeah, everybody can just download it. If you want to shoot me a donation of like $7.77 or something, that would be lovely. That was the year before, this is October now, so not a good time to buy a calendar for that year, get a notification like, Luke, this person has sent you $777 for the planner. And I'm like, what? Like, why is he buying a planner at this time of the year? And I'm looking for him, and I've got a notification on my phone about him. So I open up PayPal. I'm like, how can I message him back? How do I say thank you? And I'm like, I can't find him. And then my teacher, Sarah, forwards me a Patreon notification that she's gotten where he's commented and said, hey, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, this is my email and my phone number. Would love some more and more of that, like, 7 energy, or like would like to get in touch with Kelly as well. And I'm like, and she sent it to me at 7:34, which is my life path number. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm thinking about this person, trying to find them. And then my teacher has forwarded me a comment from them with their details on it in that moment. And I'm like, this is freaking cool. Then I go to the Patreon page and the original comment has been deleted. So he's like posted this, gotten embarrassed, been like, no, that's weird. I'm sounding weird. I'm going to delete that. But Sarah has forwarded the email with the notification on it before he's had a chance to delete it. So I've gotten it anyway. It's come to me anyway. Nobody else has seen it besides me and Sarah. So I sent him an email and I'm like, thank you so much. I wasn't expecting a donation. Really appreciate it. By the way, do you get a sense that we know each other? I get a reply from him that's just like, oh my God, I was just thinking about you. And then an email from you came up and he's like, how does she have my email? Like, I deleted that comment. And then so begins like emailing back and forth for a couple of weeks where we're like trying to get to know each other better, and just like all these things are coming up. You know, it sounds like he's talking about stuff that's going on in my head, like my stream of consciousness is his stream of consciousness. We read the same books, like we follow the same teachers. Have had almost like opposite lifetimes in the same way. Like, I grew up on the Gold Coast, really wanted to move to Brisbane because I had a sense that there was like more culture and education and stuff like that there. He grew up in Brisbane, was constantly on the Gold Coast, wanted to be like free and on the beach and whatever. Like, he had a very conservative, hard-working, entrepreneurial family. I was raised by like a single mother who was all like woo-woo and socialist and feminist and all of that. So I was like, yeah, and then I went to university, so I'm like radical environmentalist, feminist in the sense of like, I think a feminine way of viewing the world is beneficial for everybody to bring things into balance. Not like a, you know, one gender is better than the other kind of thing. I'm not like that at all. But just like a feminine way of being could be privileged. But yeah, so more like that way leaning, whereas he's more like, you know, and I'm like, universal basic income. And he's like, people need a purpose and need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and take responsibility. So we're like two halves of this. And then all these things like my numbers, I'm a 7 life path and an 11 destiny number, which comes down to a 2. So my numbers are 7 and 2, and he's a life path 27, 9, and his numbers, he's a life path 9 and a destiny number 7, and 7 plus 9 are 7, 2 plus 7 are 9. So the sum of my numbers is his life path number, and the sum of his numbers is my number. Our relationship number is a 7 because you go 7 plus 9, which comes to 16 or 7. So we've got that 777 across our charts as well. His like north node, south node to north node journey, on my south node to north node journey is the same as his sun sign to rising journey. So I'm a Gemini south node, Sagittarius north node. He's a Gemini sun, Sagittarius rising. So we both like rising into that Sagittarius energy. I was born under a Sagittarius full moon. He was born under a Gemini new moon. So our moons are exactly opposite each other in terms of like sign and phase, right? Which is funny because I think, why aren't they exactly opposite each other aspect wise? Because it doesn't come up as an exact opposite alignment, but they're opposite in sign and in phase. So when you put them together, it makes one whole moon or one whole sign, right? I'm an ENFP, he's an INFP. So again, opposites, EI of the same whole, NFP, because I'm an extrovert, he's an introvert. Yeah, just like a million billion things like that I could go on to forever. Like, we literally compiled this table that's just like all of our things, and it goes for pages and pages, including like all the signs we get, And then this part's a little bit more sensitive, so we were just like talking nonstop, right? And it was getting kind of weird. And he was like, I don't understand why I want to talk to you all the time. Like, I don't really like people. I don't want to talk to people. Why can't I stop talking to you? And I'm like, yeah. But I felt like I had more information on my side, and I didn't know if it was ethical to be like, I think we're twin flames. But I did a tarot spread, and I asked, what's my connection with Luke? And the most twin flamey cards you could have gotten all came out. Like from my oracle deck, I pulled the High Priest and the High Priestess side by side. They were the two cards I pulled from that deck. And then out of my tarot deck, I got like the Lovers, Ace of Wands, Two of Cups, an Eight of Pentacle card that had two candles in it, so literally two flames. I can't remember if the Devil came out, but yeah, just like the most twin flamey cards you could get. Oh, and the Judgment card, which in this deck, which is the Lightseers deck, the Judgment card is like a person with like their soul coming out, like they're astral projecting. And I had already started to wonder if I was like a Pleiadian envoy. And so he's like, what's going on? Why do I want to talk to you? What's our connection? Like, we must know each other from a past life or something. And he's very politely trying to be like, what's going on here? And you know, he's like very much a family guy, very committed in his marriage, trying to be like nothing sus whatsoever, but like, what's happening? I'm like, I really want to talk to you all about this, but I feel like maybe you should come to it on your own terms. I don't want to blurt at you. Maybe we should have a phone call or something. And he's like, no, it's okay. Just tell me. And then I come out with the most insane rant where I'm like, I think we're twin flames, and that doesn't mean it has to be a romantic connection, but you know, I have all these reasons to think this, and I feel this as well. And also, I was like, I think we may even be like a starseed type of twin flame, where we like came down to the planet as part of like a Pleiadian envoy program to like seed love and light and have a shared mission together or something. His response was so funny. He was like, okay, epic fail in terms of not like oversharing and having a big rant. But he said, I already know I'm a Pleiadian envoy. Like, that's not new information, Kelly. And it's so funny how being in this world and doing readings to people, you say the most insane stuff, and that's not even the shocking part to people. So he's like, no, like my nan already told me. Oh yeah, so his nan was in the spiritual church as well, same as my grandfather. And I was going to the spiritual church that told me that my dad was dead and with me, that helped me find my real dad, is the same spiritual church that his nan would go to. So we're both grandchildren of spiritualists in that way. So it was like, yeah, my nan already told me that. I know that already. He's like, I don't know about this twin flame thing. I'll have to look into that more. And then, yeah, he ended up getting on board with that, which I was not pushing. But anyway, so we had our very first phone conversation around then. He was like on a work break, and I was just pushing the pram around trying to get the toddler to sleep. And we're just having a chat, just very friendly, conversation flowing really, really well. And we admitted to each other that we feel like this kind of desire to be physically close. And we were trying very hard to keep it like PG, not weird. I was just like, yeah, I feel a lot like I want to be near you and I want to be close to you. And he's like, yeah, I feel that too. And I'm like, okay. And I couldn't tell if we were feeling the same thing, but we were both just trying to like leave certain things unsaid so that it wasn't weird. I feel like there was some kind of voice activation that happened on that call, because after I hang up, I've got to go to the chemist and go pick my oldest kid up from his like educational thing that day. He had a day at like a special school once a week that would help him get school ready. And I went to the chemist, and I just feel like I'm very visual when it comes to feelings. Like colors are a big thing for me. And it just feels like there's this black hole in my chest, like this big black shape that is like pulling me to him. Like I just feel like this sucking feeling and like this intense desire to like hug him or be close to him. It's just like so overwhelming and profound. And I'm like, what is happening? And again, like I had never experienced like energy like this before, just so palpable, like someone had physically like stuck something on my chest and started like sucking on me, right? And then at the same time, I get a text from him and he's like, I feel like this really strong magnet in my chest. I'm like, that is exactly what I'm feeling. Yes, it's a magnet. It's this big black circle over my chest, like sucking, and it was so intense. I'm like, what is going on? And it's just so dizzying. And then I'm in the car and my kids are in the back. I've picked up my little one, and then all of a sudden, and this part is not so PG, and I'm very sorry to any parties listening to this who do not want to hear this part, but it happened and it wasn't our fault, okay? Not on a 3D level anyway. So I get in the car and I've turned the engine on. I'm about to pull out across 4 lanes of traffic to get home. So not daydreaming, concentrating very intently, got my kids in the back, ready to go home, trying not to pull out in front of a car. And all of the sudden, it is like an invisible person is having sex with me. Like, oh my God, I'd like never had astral sex before. It was seriously like a physical person was there, but invisible. I could feel like their hands in my hair. I could feel like all of the bits, all of the sensations happening. It was insanely distracting. And I'm like, what is going on? And even my kids are like, Mum, are you going to drive the car? And I'm like, hang on, like, I don't know if I can drive right now. What's happening? I'm just so confused. Like, what is going on? Eventually, it starts to subside, or I like snap myself, like, you know, get into that like beta brain state where I'm like concentrating in the physical as strongly as I can. While I'm driving home, I'm thinking, what could be happening right now? And I'm like, I'm really sure it's Luke. Like, it felt like him. Is it possible that he's like having thoughts about me and doesn't realize that he's like, that I'm hooked into this and I'm physically experiencing what he's thinking about? And then I thought, okay, how do I tell him that this happened? How do I awkwardly be like, hey, sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you, but if you were thinking about this, I'm aware of that. And, you know, you should just know that I'm privy to that. Sorry. Or should I just not embarrass him and not mention it ever again? And I was just thinking to myself, oh no, how do I have this conversation? Do I have this conversation at all? What a weird thing to bring up with like a new friend, right? Park the car, and I've got about 15 text messages from this guy that are all like, hey, I know what you're doing. I can feel that. No hard feelings, not judging you, but please don't. I'm married, not interested. Like, thanks very much, but don't let it happen again. And I'm like, so embarrassed and like freaking out. I'm like, no, I thought it was you. And you can tell he just doesn't believe me. He's like, yeah, okay, sure, just don't let it happen again. I'm like, no, really. And I take a photo of myself like with the kids. I'm like, see, driving a car, hanging out with the kids, not trying to psychically molest you. And he's like, oh, okay then. But then after that, I'm like, what happened? What's going on? And so that kind of broke the ice a little bit. Oh yeah, what did I say? I wanted them to believe me. And so I said, look, I do desire you, not trying to psychically molest you though. So that was clearly probably not the right thing to say, but I said it, and then the cat was kind of out of the bag. And then after that, it became much harder not to be like, why are we so obsessed with each other? And then we were like, well, maybe we can just be friends and we can like invite our partners out and we can have like a play date or something. You know, like we have very similar parenting styles. We're both married to life path 8s with 4-letter names starting with N. You know, just like even the people we're married to are like mirrors of each other, and then he and I are like mirrors of each other. It's just such a trip. Yeah, so we like went on a play date. He'd invited his wife. She couldn't make it for whatever reason. I invited my husband. He just flat out didn't want to come. So it ended up being him and his kid and me and my kids. Oh yeah, and by the way, my youngest son's name is Luke, remember, who's also a life path 9. And I'd actually gone to a workshop in person for Sarah yet one other time, and Lukey was crying the whole way down. And then I was crying, and I felt like such a monster trying to put my toddler in the car and trying to drive somewhere with him crying the whole time. I ended up pulling over and I texted Sarah and I was like, sorry, I'm not going to make it. And she called me and she's like, where are you? You're pretty much here already. Keep driving. And I said, but the baby's crying and I feel really bad and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, what if this whole workshop was for Luke? Like, what if he was meant to be here with you? What if that was what meant to happen? What if this was all a lesson so that you could push through it, Kelly? And she was like, get here. And so I did, and he was fine, and it all went really, really well. But it was so funny to have that conversation before the next time I went, which is where I met a Luke, right? Anyway, so crazy. So that's another thing. So like, my son's name is Luke, and then his son's name means the same thing that my name does in Gaelic. So I'm like, that's weird. Like, our kids have the same name meaning as we do. And yeah, just super crazy things. Like, the day that his son was born, I was also in the hospital, a different hospital, but like in the same city, looking after a friend who'd fallen off a skateboard and broken his arm, whose name was Nick, which would become my first son's name. So it's like, I was in the hospital with a boy who shared my son's name the same day that he was in the hospital with his son being born. Like, just crazy things like that all the time. Like, so many that can't even begin to go over all of them. But yeah, you've gotten a bit of a taste of them. Anyway, so we meet up in person. Like, nothing sus, but just things like, you know, like, he handed me my kid's tricycle and our fingers got like stuck together, and I could feel like all the electricity of that and felt like I was going to faint or pass out because the chemistry was just so intense. And I went home and I was talking to my husband, and I said, look, I realize it might be a bit strange. So I've got this new friend who's a male, and you and I are having these very serious problems. I just want you to know that if you want to talk about it, or if you're feeling jealous or anything, like, we can talk about it, and I'm listening, okay? And he kind of laughed at me, and he said, why would I be jealous? And he's like, I doubt a man is going to be interested in you when you've got two kids, like, on either hip, like a kid on either hip. And I was just like, okay. Like, is that why you've got me chained to the kids all the time? Anyway, it was just like a weird moment where I was like, oh, husband, like, this is gonna get more awkward very soon. So Luke and I got to this point where we were like, okay, we're clearly like attracted to each other, and we didn't mean this in like, we're gonna go have an affair, just like incredibly magnetized to each other, obsessed with each other, to be honest. Can't stop talking to each other. We need to talk to our partners about this and be honest. All the advice online about twin flames is like, do not tell anybody about it. You will sound crazy. No one will believe you. But I was like, so naive. I'm like, no, I'm going to appeal to honesty and integrity and truth, and I'm going to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And also, if my husband were obsessed with somebody else, I would really want to know that. I would be like, well, thank you so much for telling me that. Now I don't have to be in a marriage where somebody has very strong feelings for somebody else, or we could talk about how to manage that, you know? Like, I feel like if it's not informed consent, it's not consent, right? I am not the kind of person who'd be like, oh yeah, go have an affair, just don't tell me about it. Like, that is not me at all. So my husband is the opposite. He's like, don't tell me things that are painful. I don't want to know. But I'm like, well, I have to be honest, like, very different values. So I was like, hey, by the way, I try to keep all this woo-woo stuff away from you because I know you don't like it, but all of a sudden I need to catch you up on a lot really, really quickly. And I was like, so I'm talking to aliens, and I think I am an alien. And I think this other guy is the same type of alien I am. And I think that, you know, we have this insanely strong connection, and I can't stop thinking about him. And he knows everything that I'm thinking, and I have no secrets from him because he will straight up ask me about something that's going through my head the minute it's going through my head. And we feel each other. And, you know, if he has anxiety, I get anxiety. And if I'm feeling happy, he feels that happiness. And we can, like, transmute each other's emotions and stuff. It's really cool. Like, one day I was doing a reading, and in this really strong, like, earth goddess energy was coming through. And as I was doing the reading, I was covered in bugs. Like, straight up, I had a caterpillar on my leg, I had spiders up my arms, I had bull ants on me. There was, like, other various insects I don't know the name for on me. I was seriously covered in bugs. And the soul I was channeling was saying, go with it, that's me, that's my energy, that's my spirit. This is us, like, communing and immersing together, right? So I was like, okay, I'm just going to trust that I'm covered in bugs while I'm doing this reading. Amazing reading. When I'm done, I've cleared the energy and all of that, I see I've gotten a message from Luke, and he says, why do I feel like I'm covered in bugs? Why is my skin kind of crawling? He specifically said, why do I feel like I'm covered in bugs? And I was like, well, I'm covered in bugs literally right now, so maybe that has something to do with it. So anyway, all of that stuff, gosh, this recording is getting long. Anyway, all of it, this is still only the first like 2 months of having met this person. It just throws your world upside down. Clearly Miraculous Ladybug is metaphor for twin flames, and also probably MK Ultra and like alien love bites if you're interested in that. Because the MK Ultra program that is meant to like program people to be twin flames is called Monarch Programming, and that show is literally about like 2 twin flames who have to fight someone called Monarch who's like possessing people. So clearly that show is a message about something. If anybody else is interested in Miraculous Ladybug, please analyze it with me, because there's clearly something in there. Unless in watching it I got brainwashed into this whole twin flame thing or something. I don't know. But there's something there and it's nuts. Somebody else please tell me that they've seen this as well. Anyway. So we basically spend the next year trying not to speak to each other, you know, chasing and running and blocking and being like, okay, I'm effing up your marriage right now. My husband thinks I am completely insane. Doesn't get it at all. Doesn't think we should break up. Thinks we should keep working on it. And I'm like, I don't think there's much to work on at this point. And it's really hard for me to get my heart in it, but I keep kind of trying because, you know, we're married and we have kids and I feel like I owe it to him to keep trying. And honestly, the whole twin flame thing makes it more confusing because I'm like, well, I don't want to just leave this marriage for somebody else. I want to leave it to be alone. But because there is this other person that I'm insanely drawn to, I feel like I can't make a decision about staying or leaving my relationship without factoring Luke in somehow. And I also realized that if I was suddenly single, that's a huge threat to his marriage and his relationship. And it's obviously in like his marriage's best interest if I stay married. So it's very confusing, and we're both like trying to work in our relationships, trying to block each other, but then getting like depressed and missing each other, and the sinks get stronger when you're in separation. So like there was one day when he was like, screw this Kelly lady, don't need her, stepped outside, and then this big yellow truck with the words Kelly on it parked in front of him, like in that exact moment, and he was like, damn it. Like, and the same thing would happen to me. I remember one day I was just sitting in the car crying my eyes out, like feeling so jealous and sad and trying to be like, he needs to live his life and be in his marriage and be with his family, and I'm just gonna like live without him or whatever. Keep in mind, I was raised by a feminist single mother who taught me that codependency was like the worst thing in the world. So this is all very strange for me. And I'm like bawling my eyes out in the car. I was going to go to the library at the university to do some work. I get out of the car and I start walking up the hill with some random who keeps smiling at me. And he's like, oh, we're going the same way. And I said, oh, which way are you going? And he said, to the church. And I said, oh, that's not where I was going, but I'll follow you. I'm like, I'm just following the sign, you know, like God wants me to go this way. So apparently in a lecture hall, there's a church that pops up there on the weekends. I sit down, and of course it starts with, today we're going to look at Luke and miraculous conception. And so I already had the download that and the sense that Luke and I have a spirit baby together. By the way, spirit babies don't mean that you have to have them, but yeah, there's a spirit baby. And I jokingly like came up with a placeholder name for that spirit baby. And I said to the person, I introduced myself to the person I sat down next to, and her name had that spirit baby's name. And then we're looking at Luke and miraculous conception and you know, all the narratives that lead up to Jesus being conceived and all of that. And I'm just sitting there like, cool, well, this didn't distract me from the person I'm crying over right now. I'm literally sitting here studying all the parts of the Bible with this person's name in it and talking about spirit babies and miraculous conception as the person with my spirit baby's name is sitting next to me. Like, anyway, just this is just one example of the crazy things that were happening almost every single day. Like, it was so impossible to deny. Anyway, fast forward to almost exactly 1 year since we met. And I have been like trying in my marriage, but I'm like still so done. Like, when I said that I was done a year ago, I really meant it, and it was so hard for me to get myself back online. A lot of crazy things had happened in my relationship. Like, we were trying really hard to reconnect, but then also having like the worst days of our marriage still, like just insane, you know, packing my bags and him telling me to get out, and yeah, just stuff like that. where like I thought over and over again that was really it. I was like, okay, you know, like the police were even involved at some point. It was crazy. And I was getting into a state where I was just late home almost every single day. Anytime I left the house, I was late because I would just start bawling my eyes out and just think, I do not want to go home. I cannot walk back in that door. And it wasn't because of my kids. It was because I didn't want to be in that marriage. I didn't want to be in that house anymore. And so I'd gone to the park to go do a reading for somebody. Reading went well, had an amazing call from this guy, Laurie Douglas, who mentors me. He's amazing. I just got to like link to all these people I'm name dropping to. I know I name drop a lot, but like I'm an academic, remember. I give credit where credit is due, and I'm nothing but, you know, the work of my teachers in a lot of ways. So I'm going to link to all of them. So Laurie's amazing. Gave me a reading. He was tuning into my energy, and he's super strong, and he was like, you got shackles around your ankles. I'm like, yeah, I know. And I went and I was messaging Luke as well, and it was another, like, we'd been kind of distant at the time, and really not distant, it's always like fluctuating between like insanely connected, insanely distant, right? Oh yeah, another thing, sorry, ADHD brain. I'm just going to self-diagnose on that. Another time that he was like, sorry, I can't talk to you anymore. This is weird and inappropriate. Like, we got to do the right thing here. I like sobbed, right? Went outside to catch my breath. And then on the deck, saw 2 shooting stars go past. And then I've got this like Star Walk app on my phone that shows you like in real time where all these planetary bodies are. And when I zoomed in on that area, because I wanted to see if there was a meteor shower, I saw a meteor named 144. In that exact spot where I saw the 2 shooting stars, and I just started laughing, and I'm like, how funny that like the second 3D Luke, it's like, I can't talk to you anymore, the universe comes in and takes his place. And they're like, no, you're still on your track, don't worry about it, like, all happening for a reason, you're still in the stars, you're still part of this light working collective, it's all happening as it's meant to, right? So that's amazing. But anyway, so, you know, it's a year after this, which is only a couple months ago. I messaged Luke, I was like, okay, have a good life. I'll try not to speak to you at least for like the weekend or whatever, so you can have time with your family. You know, bye. And I was very surrendered at that point. Like, I'd had so many downloads that we were going to end up together, but at the same time, like, you can't live in the future. You can't live in your premonitions. You still have to surrender and go with the flow and trust that whatever turns out, whether you saw it or not, it's going to be for the highest good, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to surrender. I'm just going to go, what is meant to happen will happen. And I was so sad. Surrendered, but sad. They can both exist simultaneously. And I was so sad that I walked in the door and I told my husband I can't do this anymore. And, you know, and it was a good feeling because it was like, okay, I've seriously let go of Luke. I've said, go live your life and be with your family. I still can't be in my marriage. Like, I'm not leaving him for somebody else. This is like, I cannot do this anymore. And I think because I'd had that conversation so many times in the last year, my husband still didn't really take me seriously, but that was the end of it. Then I find out in the next like 6 hours that Luke did the exact same thing. After I said bye, and then very sadly walked home and told my husband it's over. He also went and told his wife that it's over at the same time, and we did not plan that. It just came out of both of us. It's like, we describe it sometimes when we have to be honest about it as like almost needing to vomit, like we just need to say it out loud. And then it took us about 6 weeks to actually move out. And yeah, and now we live together, and we're like, I don't know if that counts as being in union, but it's pretty close. And that's my twin flame journey, and it's amazing being together. And I'm sorry if that's like really insensitive to people, and I know it sounds dumb, and on paper it looks terrible. Like, I would have loved to have broken up with my husband way before Luke broke up with his wife, and had like a couple of years on my own, being single and productive, and, you know, getting my kids used to it, and getting myself all independent, and, you know, being the spiritual twin and not the matrix twin or whatever, but we both left at the same time. It was like, well, you know, he's kind of like, I'm not going to leave my marriage and give up a house so that we can't be together. And I'm like, okay. So it's just this huge leap, and it sounds stupid. It was such a faith-based thing, but oh my God, we are so happy together. Like, still reading each other's thoughts, still feeling each other, still in sync. Like, you know, we still have little like disagreements and things are kind of crazy. Like, we moved house, both starting all over again, both trying to get our kids as like happy as possible, or like just feel for them and be there for them through it all. It's very confusing for them, although not as bad as I would have thought it would be. But yeah, just like even moving day, we moved like 5 van loads worth of stuff, and we were still just like high-fiving each other and saying I love you at the same time, and getting comments from people around us about like how cute we were. And yeah, just like every day has been like a fairy tale, and even when we're arguing, like I would rather argue with him than anybody else, and that happens extremely rarely. Mostly we're just like teasing each other for the way we chop capsicums or something or hang washing on the line, but we don't really care. But yeah, so that's where I'm up to. And is that all of the story I was meant to tell, Spirit? And yeah, I get this feeling when we're together like we're healing a lot, and the twin flame journey is such a journey that if you're not already committed to self-growth and healing, you will be. And luckily Luke and I were already awake. We had a head start, like all the twin flames before us, and all the people on the planet, and all the light workers on the planet, and all the high-level soulmates on the planet, and all of everybody has done so much work healing all the heaviness on the planet that we had it easy compared to a lot of people. I mean, he would say not easy. He's like, I lost a house and I gave up a good marriage and all of this. Woo! Dropping the phone. Does that mean that's not true? And yeah, I guess it wasn't easy, but it still wasn't like the same as like 10 years ago when everybody was way less healed or woke, and we didn't have a lot of good role models for how to be humble and understand that we manifest our own reality and take responsibility for our drama and our triggers and our wounds and stuff. But we're both really committed to that. And when we're together and like it's just like layer after layer of healing comes up, like you think you've healed it all, and then you find a deeper wound and a deeper wound, and it's crazy, but we hold each other through that. And it feels like we're not just healing each other, it feels like we're healing something bigger than us. It feels like we're healing something through space and time. Like it feels like we're healing our past lives. It feels like we're healing our genetic lineages. Like I feel like I'm here healing Lyran stuff, and he's healing like reptilian and Arcturian stuff, and we're healing more recent past lives, and we're healing like collectives of people. Like, and I know that probably sounds really egotistical and weird and woo-woo, but it feels like that. And anyway, I know it sounds crazy, like my ex has said a lot of things, and I've said a lot of things about it. He doesn't believe me. Probably nobody really believes me. Even people among like spiritual communities, it's controversial and up for debate, right? Everyone has a different idea around like, well, twin flames meant to be together, and do they ever get together? Or is it just a cult? Or is it like an alien love bite, MK Ultra thing? Someone Liv in my Patreon group made a good point. He said, well, maybe the whole alien love bite, brainwashing thing, MK Ultra thing going on is there to discredit and confuse twin flames. I'm like, you know what, actually that resonates. But anyway, so many rabbit holes that you can get down. But all I can say is that if you're on the journey and you're scared to talk about it and you think you're crazy, well, I'm crazy too. I should stop using that word. I'm with you. Whatever we are, we're it together. And I'm really, really happy. And I don't regret any choices I've made. I wonder if I could have done things more smoothly, but I tried at every point to be as honest as possible, and I hope that that's enough. But anyway, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, just here to tell the story, and I really hope Luke tells his part of the story one day too. He will. I've already seen it. Sorry. It must be hard being with someone who's like, can predict the future. I don't get everything right, but I get a lot right. Like I knew we'd be together in August 2024. And even though things were like fluctuating, we'd stop talking and we'd get mad at each other and we'd start talking again, that timeline didn't change. And it's funny too, sometimes we feel like we're going off timelines, but the ups and the downs were all part of that higher timeline. Funny. Anyway, oh shush now. So you're pretty much up to date on my story as of today. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Maybe I can get on with my work now or move on to something else now that I've gotten that out. Thanks everybody. Love you. Bye.